We see police interrogations in movies and TV shows, but we rarely get a real and raw look at the tactics used to hunt for the truth. A new TEGNA and Vault Studios podcast called Anything You Say takes us inside the process. Here's a sneak peek in DBL's True Crime Chronicles.
This is where the rubber meets the road, Chris. Like, don't let this continue any longer, please.
Police interrogations can be excruciating, lasting hours, waiting for a confession.
So you go to bed, she stays up. What's she doing?
She's just on her phone, playing, I don't know what game.
Tension and accusation linger in the air.
What would you think I'm accusing you of?
I don't know, but I want a lawyer.
Okay. All right.
Because obviously you're accusing me of something.
Everything is thought out to a T.
The colors are drab, and those are interrogation rooms. A lot of times they're going to get people in there that want to come in and talk. Their goal is to get people in there to talk without lawyers.
Sometimes a confession comes easy, like in 2019, when former Dallas police officer Amber Geiger fatally shot an unarmed black man in his apartment, mistaking it for her own.
I still felt like that guy was gonna kill me. She was alive.
She walked into her interrogation room sobbing, admitting guilt, but that's typically not always the case. The new podcast, Anything You Say, explores the twisted interrogation stories like those of Christopher Watts.
I want them back home, like.
But you know they're not coming back home. You know that.
I don't know in the back of my head. I hope they come back home.
The Colorado father repeatedly denied involvement in his wife and daughter's disappearances in 2018.
And here's what we're confused about. I told you that we've done some work overnight. I told you that we've got a lot of leads.
The two officers you see here used special tactics and training to eventually get Christopher to crack.
My favorites are gone. And I put my hands around my wife's neck and did that.
He confessed to killing his pregnant wife and two young daughters and dumping their bodies.
Where are they?
That first location I went to that day.
Exactly how do these seasoned investigators get the suspect to finally crack? It's a science they have down to a T, a science that is being explored in depth in the brand new podcast, Anything You Say.
Why take their bodies out of the house and bury them? I was scared. I didn't know what else to do.
Earlier, Eric and I spoke with the host of this new podcast to learn more. Check it out. We are joined by Chief Investigative Reporter Eric Flack from WUSA 9 in Washington, D.C. Eric, thank you so much for joining us. You are also the host of this brand new podcast. So tell us, what inspired you to talk about interrogations and what can we expect from it?
Hey, Sam, thanks so much for having me. The podcast is called Anything You Say, and I've spent most of my 2 decades-long career in investigative journalism focused on crime and justice, and my sources would always tell me, you know, these interrogations, these confessions we get, it's not like you see on these crime dramas on TV. It takes art, it takes science, it takes a real nuance for these investigators to get these suspects who are basically there to lie about some of the worst things they've ever done. They're there to lie, but the investigators have to use their skills to get them to tell the truth.
Well, you learned a lot about the science and tactics officers use to get the truth during interrogations. Which tactics were you most surprised by?
Just hearkening back to the TV example, you know, on TV, the detective comes into the room and they say, you know, where were you on the night of August 22nd? 30 seconds later, they have the confession and it's all over. The truth is that, you know, it takes a lot more than that. And early on in these interrogations, often, you know, these detectives and these investigators are actually, they're befriending the suspect. In one episode that we will release this week, the Ronnie Hyde case in Jacksonville, Florida, the detective starts out talking to the suspect about Topgolf. Topgolf, the game we all play, those places we go. And then, later on, it goes into much serious and more sinister places.
The first episode focuses on the Christopher Watts case. Are there any other big name cases you'll be exploring in the podcast?
What we look for in a case, in an interrogation, in an episode, is something that's going to allow us to really have some meat on the bone for these experts that we've brought in from all across the country to really break down the art and the science and the tactics that these investigators use to get these confessions. So it's really the interrogation that we're looking for. Look, the truth is that you could analyze the interrogation of a shoplifter and find some interesting things. Now, that said, most of the cases and crimes we focus on are horrific crimes. But it's really the type of the interrogation and what we can learn, and most importantly, what the podcast listener can learn. At the end, walk away with and say, hey, that was really cool. I can't believe that.
Yeah, you learned some science and tactics. I might just be using that in my next argument with my husband. Just kidding. Just kidding. Thank you, Eric. The first episode of the Vault Studios podcast is out now. You can find it by searching Anything You Say on your favorite podcast player.